Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Carter. I love talking about movies, superheroes, comic books, and horror movies. Speaking of horror movies, I wanted to sit down and rank every single film in the Alien franchise. In this ranking, I'm going to include the Alien vs. Predator movies as well, not only just because I think it'd be fun to include them, but to me, I like when rankings are like big and expanded. It just makes it feel more full. As I go through all of these films, I'll share some personal history with the franchise and with the movies, and of course, I'm going to include the new kid on the block, which is Alien Romulus, that came out this weekend. This ranking will be a little late, but I have seen the film, I've given a lot of thought to it, and I've seen all of these films multiple times except for Romulus. Getting started with number 9, it's Alien 3, and full disclosure, I don't think this is the worst movie on the list. There are certainly worse movies that have been made besides Alien 3 in this franchise, but to me, this is a movie to where it just rubs me the wrong way in a lot of different ways. For example, it completely undoes the ending of Aliens and just casts a sour tone on the film by killing Newton Hicks in the first 5 minutes in a way that just makes me feel gross. You see a full autopsy of Newt, and it just really feels very cynical and nihilistic in this franchise, which is a weird gripe for me to have. I'll be the first one to admit it, but this film has always felt off to me. I've never really been able to connect to it. Even when I can try and get over the opening 5 minutes, I just think that it's not a very pretty film. I think that Fincher tried his best here. I don't blame him at all, but the studio and the writers just blacklisted him completely from the editing room. He shot without a script, and so the end result is just a jumbled mess on top of what they do with the Aliens characters. And Alien 3 has just always been my least favorite of the franchise. I mean, I watched the franchise in order, so I started with Alien, went to Alien 3, and it's just kind of stayed at the bottom of my list pretty comfortably this entire time. Going to number 8, this is pretty much what is, in my opinion, the worst Alien film that's been made. Just in terms of filmmaking, in writing, in direction, in like terms of technicality and creativity, it's the worst one. And of course, this is going to be Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. This movie is just everything that I said about Alien 3 being cynical and nihilistic. This movie is that times 10. If you ever wanted to see multiple pregnant women killed, this is the movie for you. They're in a maternity ward, about to give birth, about to start a new life with their children, and then the pred alien comes in and you see it lay its eggs in them, and then they die by being chest bursted. So that's awesome. This film feels like a harsh blowback to the criticism that AvP got for not being too R-rated, for being PG-13, there's not enough blood, guts, and gore. The Alien vs. Predator Requiem team was like, well, let's kill a bunch of kids, let's kill a bunch of pregnant women, see what sticks, let's nuke a town. To me, this movie, on top of just being so nasty and just gross in all the wrong ways, to me there's a threshold I have for horror films and for movies in general. This movie crosses all of it. It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and on top of that, the characters are bland and boring, the story is dumb and uninteresting, and I just think that the effects would be cool if you could see anything on screen. Every criticism you see hailed against this movie, everyone will bring up, first thing they'll probably bring up is that there's no light. It is so dark. I watched this movie in a pitch black room on my phone with max brightness, and it is just not really for me at all. If you find enjoyment from this or Alien 3, by no means am I trying to say my opinion is better than yours. Opinions are what make the world go round, and I would love to hear your ranking on all of the Alien movies, your opinions on the Alien movies. Let me know down in the comments below. I know that Alien 3 has its fans. I'm just not one of them. Coming into number 7 is Alien vs. Predator. This movie came out in 2004, and I remember growing up, I had a friend who would always play this on his TV when we were there. Like, his dad, it was like his favorite movie, and he's like, oh, it's PG-13, let's sit down and watch. And like, the xenomorphs are genuinely terrifying. I'm still like very creeped out by the xenomorphs, the face huggers, everything to this day. It still really unnerves me, really makes me uncomfortable. And so I remember just being so petrified of this film when I was younger. Sat down a few years ago, watched it for the first time, and I really disliked it. Watching it again, it grew on me a tiny little bit, but not in any way that's, notable. Just that I was able to have a little more dumb fun with this than I expected. Lance Henriksen returning is always a delight, and I do kind of get some guilty pleasure from the human and the predator teaming up in the end and the way they run in slow motion together and jump on the sled. I also think that the effects here range from really good in close-ups with the alien queen to genuinely horrible with just like horrible PS2 CGI graphics when some of the aliens are moving. A lot of the sensors don't really work here. I wish that they went all out with this film and just went and leaned into the cool Antarctica setting. I mean, there's a lot of weird things in this movie that I can forgive. I'm not really a fan of all the lore that it brings. I like the idea that the predators, fight the aliens and that's their like ritual, but just kind of weird. Everything weird that it plays out, like people multiple thousands of years ago can build this like insane massive escape room because the predators were like, do it. The predators can't really communicate with people that well, so I'm kind of interested to see how that would have played out. And in a lot of ways, this movie to me is just really kind of a letdown. There's so much you could do with a fun versus movie, but the fights that we get here really aren't all that great. I do like some of the moments here, like the predator decapitating the alien, or the alien stabbing the predator through the chest with its tail. Some stuff like that is really cool, but then you kind of have goofy stuff, like that's kind of goofy in a bad way, to where the predator, like full WWE, swings the alien around into pillars, and it just looks so weird. It looks very, very weird. Coming into number 6, we have Alien Resurrection. This is a movie I've only seen twice, so it's the movie I've seen the least on this list besides Romulus. For me, Resurrection has some interesting ideas that are just executed really, really poorly. What I love most about this film is how much of a B-movie slasher film it feels. It feels like it's so intentionally over the top with everything. The blood, guts, and violence and gore here are really fun in a good way. Like, it's just so ridiculous when the guy has the chestburster, gets shot 8 times. He's like running towards the people, and then the chestburster comes through his chest into the guy's head. Stuff like that is really fun. Brad Dourif here is great. I like Ron Perlman. The writing here, though, by Joss Whedon just doesn't translate that well to an Alien film or to screen when it comes to this. I think the direction is a little fast, loose, and messy. Doesn't quite work in a great way for me. And so the end result is a movie that's fun, but in my opinion, by no means is good. It's entertaining a little bit. I don't think I'm as harsh on it as I used to be when I first saw it. A recent rewatch, it was pretty fun, pretty entertaining, but by all means, I really don't think this is that great of a film. I think it has a lot of issues that have been talked about for years. The hybrid is weird and unsettling and not in a good way. Ripley being a clone here is just very, very awkward and comes off just as stunted and strange. I like that it takes place so far in the future, and I think Winona Ryder is interesting, but there's a lot here that really holds this movie back for me. Primarily just that it feels like a big step away and departure from the earlier Alien films, both in look, feel, and tone. It's just feeling very disconnected. At worst, it feels like a slasher parody of what could have been an Alien film. Going into my top 5, these are movies that I would go positive on. Even if I'm a little mixed when I talk about them, I would definitely give them a positive review. Coming in at number 5, we have Prometheus from 2012. One of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen in my entire life as far as cinematography goes. This movie is just gorgeous to look at. Ridley Scott absolutely cooked here in the lab. He just made every design, every intricate little thing look so, so good. Props to the cinematographer here and the set deck, set design. Pretty much everything when it comes to a technical level on this film is genuinely phenomenal. Almost unmatched, I would say. And I think a lot of Ridley Scott's ideas about creation, about where we came from, are very interesting and intriguing, but feels so disjointed and so odd coming as a prequel to the Alien movies. Especially when you have people who are scientists going up and trying to pet a growling alien snake, or running in a straight line away from a ship. And yes, those are nitpicks, but stuff like that really bothers me every time I rewatch this film. I just can't get it out of my head for all the wrong reasons. I think Ridley Scott's concepts here are very interesting. They're just executed in a poor way, and I think that he almost tries to jumble too much of it together. While I do really enjoy David in this film, I think that he is a very menacing presence, a very interesting presence, no less, and Michael Fassbender just kills it here. The cast is good. I just think that they're constantly let down by the writing of this film. It just really doesn't feel that great. There are some moments here that I enjoy, like the alien C-section is always fun. The engineer just bombing Michael Fassbender is hilarious every single time I watch it. And I do like the ending, and the theme of Shaw with her faith is very interesting and how she reacts to David. But like I said, there's a lot of things in here that just don't really connect. I think a lot of the characters, like I said, are just really not written that well, and so it can be quite a bit of a downgrade going from movies like Alien and Aliens to some of the most iconic characters of all time to a movie like Prometheus, to where every single character apart from David and Shaw just really feels undercooked. At number 4, we have Alien Covenant, and this might be a hot take, but I actually enjoy this movie a little bit more than Prometheus. Now, by no means is it on the technical aspect that Prometheus is. Prometheus is a genuinely gorgeous movie, and I think Ridley Scott went too hard with the rushed practical. It looks a little too slimy in this for my taste. I just think that it's a little too dark as far as lighting goes, contrasted to the amazing effects in Prometheus. When you have stuff like a real set when they're on the ship in the very beginning, or when they go into the engineer ship, I think it looks great. Once you get to David's place of residence, I think that a lot of the effects start to go downhill very, very fast. As far as like ships and stuff, though, I think it looks great. The cast here, I really enjoy. Very surprising. I like Danny McBride in this film. Did not expect to like him, but I think he does a job really well done here. Fassbender, again, is really good too. He is a fun presence playing the dual roles of Walter and David. And this movie would be higher, but it kind of fumbles the bag when it comes to balancing what Prometheus fans want and what Alien fans want. Scott really tried to address the blowback from Prometheus and just doubled down on xenomorphs, neomorphs, backbursters, chestbursters, throatbursters, everything you can imagine, and going all the way with the gore and the violence, which I like, but in a way that I don't think he really stuck the landing with. So in a film where you have an alien bursting out of someone's chest, an alien bursting out of someone's back, bursting out of someone's throat, and like massacring people in a field, sequences that I think are really well done, really interesting. You have, David and Walter kissing for some reason. I don't know, David is really weird in this, and like just very his undertones are very strange. In full disclosure, Alien Covenant was like the first time that an Alien movie came out. I think I was like 14 or 15, and my math teacher showed me the trailer when I was like working on a test, like trying to do a makeup test after school. He's like, "Have you heard of Alien?" And I was like, "Yeah, they're freaking scary." He's like, "All right, check out this trailer for Alien Covenant." And I was like mortified, but also really intrigued because I was getting really into movies. I was in the 9th grade, just really diving headfirst into so much of what movies and film are to me. And so Covenant has a special place in my heart. I remember there was no way I was going to see it in theater, so I went online, looked up like all the spoilers, all the leaks, went on YouTube, looked up like Alien Covenant death scenes, and it was like the day it came out. So of course there's nothing there. And so I was like trying so hard to figure out what was happening in this movie, how I could see it. So Alien Covenant definitely has a special place in my heart. Whenever my friends would just stay over at my house, in high school, we'd always put on Alien Covenant at night. Every single time they'd all fall asleep by the time the backburster rolled around, and then I'd probably just doze off. It was like 4 a.m, so no disrespect to the film, but it's just a fun memory that I have with the film. So I enjoy Alien Covenant quite a bit. But I do think that it just has some things that hold it back for me, unfortunately. Getting into my top 3, these are all films that I genuinely adore. I really love these movies. One of them, is brand new, but I still love it. I still really enjoy it. I have personal connections to all of these, so I'll kind of talk about what I love about the films, what my personal connection is, and then my opinion. Again, if you disagree with my ranking, that's totally fine. I'd love to hear your opinion, so drop it in the comments below. Without any further ado, number 3 is Alien Romulus. I think that is one of the most gorgeous and just visually rich movies we've had in the franchise. I loved seeing more planets, more locations, just more characters that aren't really attached to Ripley or David, and so it was nice to get a little bit of a Rogue One-esque movie. I'm seeing that comparison everywhere, and that's the only thing that I could think of. And so I loved being able to just see more of this world. The world building here is really interesting and unique. The visuals are crazy good. Like, the last third act is just so beautiful on every level. The set deck and the set design is amazing, and Fede Alvarez just captures every single inch of the Romulus space station or of a different ship or anywhere, like the Jackson colony that they're at, just captures it with such ease and just with a really interesting eye and a really great contrast. The ship just feels so eerie and so dark and desolate and just feels like it's so dangerous. Anything could be around any corner. The sound design is fantastic, and I loved the designs for all of the creatures in here. The face huggers are horrifying in this, just running around rampant. There's some sequences in here, some set pieces that are going to be burned in my brain forever, particularly the zero gravity one. That one was a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed that. Felt very dangerous. The whole film is very suspenseful. And while it does have quite a few jump scares, maybe the most jump scares in an Alien film besides the first, I think that they actually worked pretty well. Much like the first Alien, a lot of the horror here plays really well. And then when the Aliens-esque stuff kicks in, I think that it also played very well. Kaylee Spaney, and I believe it's David Johnson, I could be pronouncing that wrong, are the standouts here by far. Both of them do a great job, and their relationship is entirely believable and very endearing, and I thought what they brought to the franchise was fresh and new, and I think Rain is a character I would love to see again. Her just resourcefulness, her willingness to keep going much reminded me of Ripley in the first two films. That was something that I very much enjoyed. There's some callbacks here or some fan service that people are saying that could definitely bug some people. It didn't quite get on my nerves. I think it bothered me once. Instead, there's effects here that feel very uncanny valley, very obviously CGI. There's a lot of practical effects, and of course there's going to be CGI aiding those practical effects in the film, but there's one effect in particular that just stood out as very odd to me. It doesn't blend well with the rest of the, not the grounded feel, but the grounded effects that Alvarez has crafted in this film. So when you watch the film, it's very easy to look at that and say, wow, that totally takes me out of the film, which in my opinion, it did. It took me out. It kind of like threw me for a loop when I watched it. I'm trying to be as vague as possible, but there's also another pretty big connection to the franchise that I think works for maybe what they're going for, but also just feels a little strange. I feel like they could have toned it down quite a bit. I understand what they're going for, and I think that it blends well with the film in moderation. I think my only complaint is that maybe they went a little too far with it, kept it going for a little too long. They could have toned it a little down just a tad. That being said, I still really enjoyed this film. There's so much to love about it, so if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend going to the theater and seeing it. I'm probably going to see it at least one more time in theaters. I really enjoyed it, and I would love to go for like a $5 Tuesday. On to my top two. These are two. Of course, I mean, it's the two that almost everybody has at the top. They change for me almost every single day. I saw one in theaters this year at the very beginning for the re-release anniversary, left a very profound effect. So number two, as of right now, is going to be Aliens. On my list right here, I actually have it as number one, but looking at everything that's come over the last year with my growth with the franchise, me trying to dive more into it, looking into everything, as much as I love Aliens, I think that maybe there's one that might be a little better. Aliens is so good here. I really enjoy everything that James Cameron does with it. He takes what Ridley Scott built and drops an action element to it, makes everything just a little bit more brutal, a little bit more vivid, and I enjoy the world building that he does here. Just small characters like Burke or Vasquez add so much to the film, or Gorman too, and I think that the relationship between Ripley, Hicks, and Newt is genuinely really touching and just cute. One of my favorite little moments in the film is when they're going over their battle plan and Hicks just lifts Newt onto the table. I don't know why, that's just something that stands out to me every time I watch the film. My one negative here would be, it's not even on the film. I think James Cameron's 4K remaster, it looks really bad. There's just too much film grain removed. It's too waxy. So I try and stick with like the Blu-ray. I might just need to bite the bullet and get an older copy because sometimes it's hard to watch. And I also have seen the theatrical and director's cuts. This is the third time I have watched Aliens this year. I watched it last night, and I really love this film. It's very rewatchable, it's very fun, but also very intense, very dark, and pretty disturbing at times. It's one of those movies to where the more I watch it, the more it sticks with me, and of course it has its fair share of iconic moments. Maybe it's a little slow paced at some points, but those slow pacing helps to just build the characters out, build out the world of the Alien universe, and so I honestly can't think of anything that can be said more about Aliens other than it's a classic. It's one of my favorite movies ever made. And to my own surprise, number one is actually going to be Ridley Scott's Alien. Wow, this is a movie to where I saw the re-release back in April in theaters. We were the only ones in the theater. And it got me. It actually kind of scared me. I haven't seen it in a long time. When I first watched it, I think I gave it like 3 stars. I watched it again, gave it 4, maybe 4.5. And then I watched it again earlier this week to prepare for Romulus. I showed one of my friends, Parker, if you're watching this, shout out, who's never seen one of the Alien films before. We watched it together. I put in the 4K disc that I got, which, by the way, looks phenomenal. One of the best 4K masters I have seen in a long time. If you are a fan of this movie, you need it on 4K. It is definitely worth the price because it looks so good. Anyways, like that aside, it's so much fun to watch the events of this movie unfold with someone who has never seen it before, or even just to rewatch it on the big screen, or rewatch it in general. The film is genuinely gorgeous. The old school effects here really go a long way to sell just how derelict and dirty this mining crew is. I love how disgusting Weyland-Yutani is. I love all the reveals with the androids, with the aliens, with what everything is really going on. And Ripley is someone who just keeps persevering throughout all of this. An instantly iconic character, and Sigourney Weaver just delivers an incredible performance. Honestly, the last act of this film is very tense and very just like, oh my goodness. And full disclosure, I kind of prefer the director's cut of the film. And I honestly like the director's cut just a little bit more because it tightens up the pacing just a little bit, which I think helps the film. It's actually shorter than the theatrical, which is crazy. And it adds a scene where they find Dallas with the flamethrower. That scene is very harrowing. I think that so many of the shots here are instantly iconic. So much of this film is just genuinely amazing. One of the greatest science fiction films ever made, one of the greatest horror films ever made, and one of the greatest movies ever made, period. It's a very influential, very inspirational film to me personally. And so for right now, Alien is going to be number one. Really at any time, Alien and Aliens could switch. Those two are just neck and neck for me. I think they're just two perfect films, honestly. So again, let me know what you think about the Alien franchise down in the comments below. If you haven't already, I dropped my Alien Romulus review, so check that out. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.